Together with this assembly, we call on all the ancient Buddhas, the Buddhas of recent times, and Buddhas still emerging, along with Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas, plants, animals, all the sentient beings, mountains, rivers, rocks and clouds, to bear witness and rejoice at this wonderful ceremony of Jukai.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Jukai ceremony for Myvanwy and Alex. As I'm sure you're all aware, we're conducting this ceremony simultaneously in person at the Twining Vines Zen Centre in Canberra, where Reverend Neti Parekh, who is the head of the temple, will be officiating. And there, of course, we also have Alex and Myvanwy, and our Eno Rain, and Myvanwy's brother, Griffin, who is helping in the background on the technical matters. So welcome everybody, Sangha members, friends and family. Jukai is a lay precept ceremony of initiation into the Buddha way. It's not a ceremony of ordination. To take up the precepts means to take up the way of living with integrity, compassion, and wisdom. Contemplating the precepts is an important and integral part of our spiritual practice. Morality and upright conduct form the basis of our meditation practice and training, and wise conduct forms the temple of our daily lives. In preparing for this ceremony, Alex and Myvanwy have spent many months contemplating the precepts and writing their vows, their responses. These vows reflect their deep understanding, values, and aspirations as to how they choose to live their lives. They've also undertaken the task of preparing and making their rakusus, about which I'll say more a little later. The recitation of the precepts is an opportunity for all of us present to reflect on these ethics and to also listen deeply to Myvanwy and Alex's vows. In the Zen tradition, a person's vows are their own unique understanding and expression of how they choose to live their life and embody their precepts. The 10 grave precepts are not rigid rules. They're not commandments, but rather they're pointers along the way. They're a guiding means and reminders as how to walk in a sacred manner of integrity and authenticity through the trials and tribulations of our daily lives. How to stay on track and not cause harm. The Buddhist precepts are primarily based on the ancient Indian philosophy of ahimsa, which is the way of not harming and treating all life with respect and care. Through our actions, thoughts, and speech, we hold the intention to not cause harm to self or others. Living by the light of the precepts helps to cultivate our character, to cultivate the force of virtue and wholesomeness in our lives. Adopting an ethical foundation helps to embody wisdom and compassion through body, speech, and mind. There is a strong relationship between ethics and wisdom. A simple analogy is the relationship between the lamp and the light. If the lamp is sooted up and dusty and dirty, then the light from within will not radiate very far. It will be obscured by the dusty lamp. However, if the lamp is clean and clear, then the light can shine far and wide. The actions of body, heart, and mind create the clear vessel for the light of wisdom to shine in its fullest capacity. The wearing of the rakusu is not to set oneself apart from other Sangha members. It's not a sign of some hierarchical order or superiority. The practice of contemplating the precepts is open to everyone, young, old, new, and old-timers. Teachers of old studied and lived by the lights of the precepts. Everyday life is a great many-faceted koan to be realized. It is the embodiment of the absolute and the relative that are always intimately intersecting one another, moment by moment. Precepts are like a rudder that helps us navigate through this mysterious, wondrous life with wisdom, compassion, and integrity. The ceremony includes recitation of the 16 Bodhisattva precepts, 3 pure precepts, 3 vows of refuge, and the 10 grave precepts. So we'll now chant purification, vandana, and tisarana.
Purification, all the harmful karma ever created by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, hatred, and ignorance, born of my conduct, speech, and thought, I now acknowledge openly and fully all the harmful karma ever created by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, hatred, and ignorance, born of my conduct, speech, and thought, I now acknowledge openly and fully all the harmful karma ever created by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, hatred, and ignorance, born of my conduct, speech, and thought, I now acknowledge openly and fully. saranam. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami.
We now come to the part of the ceremony where Myvanwy and Alex make their vows in response to the precept. Three vows of refuge.
The great precepts of all Buddhas have been maintained and protected by all the Buddhas. Buddhas hand them down to Buddhas, and ancestral teachers hand them down to ancestral teachers. Acceptance and observance of the precepts transcends past, present, and future, and forms the perfect accord in realization between teacher and disciple, continuing through all ages. Our great teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, imparted them to Mahakashapa, and Mahakashapa transmitted them to Ananda. Already the precepts have passed through many generations, in direct succession, reaching down to the present head of this temple. Now receiving the great precepts, I vow to requite my deep obligation to the Buddhas and ancestral teachers. I pledge to establish these precepts as essential teachings for human beings and other beings, so that all will inherit the wisdom of the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha's awakening and in the all-pervading Buddha nature. I vow to cultivate the clarity to see that these are not separate, and to perceive the complete coming forth of all things.
I take refuge in the Buddha. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, but it can seem hidden until we wake up from our dreams. I vow to take refuge in this awakening and to the peace that this brings to the world.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma as teaching and the fullness of the many Dharmas that arise and fall. I vow to cultivate the humility to accept and live these completely.
I take refuge in the Dharma. The truth cannot be expressed in words or contained in thoughts, and yet when I hear the teachings, I see that they are a true guide to living. I vow to take refuge in this truth and to share it with others.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha of all beings. I vow to cultivate the openness and trust to let go into the arms of the Sangha. Although I do not go for Dokusan with the magpies, they are still my teachers. Although there are places that I cannot go, there is nowhere I am not home.
I take refuge in the Sangha. Nobody can wake up for me, and yet my practice would not be possible without the support of my many companions along the way. I vow to take refuge in the support of the community, our ancestors, birds, stones, and rubbish trucks.
pure precepts. I vow to maintain the precepts.
I vow to maintain the precepts. Each precept contains the others. I vow to practice skillfully and embody the precepts in every moment.
I vow to maintain the precepts. Life is full of opportunities to indulge in the unwholesome, which harms my practice and promotes disharmony in the community. I vow to practice the precepts so that I can steadily keep to the path.
This is the day whence all Dharmas of all Buddhas arise.
I vow to practice all good dharmas.
I vow to practice all good dharmas. The Buddha way is always present. I vow to cultivate the Buddha way in every moment and practice all good dharma through any hardships.
I vow to practice all good dharmas. Life is full of opportunities to practice the wholesome and promote harmony in the community. I vow to practice good dharma so that the Buddha way can spread far and wide.
This is the path of fulfilled enlightenment.
I vow to save the many beings.
I vow to save the many beings. The many beings are already saved, and yet suffering continues. I vow to save the many beings through my practice and through my actions in the world.
I vow to save the many beings. Innumerable beings suffer in endless cycles of delusion. I vow to liberate the many beings so that we may all be at ease in life and death.
Transcending profane and holy, I liberate myself and others.
Brave precepts. I take up the way of not killing.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the everlasting Dharma, not giving rise to the idea of killing is called the precept of not killing.
I take up the way of not killing. Although there is fundamentally no birth or death, birth and death come forth fully in each moment without hindrance, gain or loss. I vow to cultivate the compassion to honor life and death in every form.
I take up the way of not killing. There is fundamentally no self that can kill or die, yet all beings suffer and fear death. I vow to protect life and act compassionately towards all beings.
The Buddha's seed grows in accordance with not taking life. Transmit the life of Buddha's wisdom and do not kill.
I take up the way of not stealing.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the unattainable Dharma, not having thoughts of gaining is called the precept of not stealing.
I take up the way of not stealing. There is no one who owns and nothing to own, and yet taking what is not given causes harm. I vow to cultivate the generosity to give freely and not cling to ideas of self and ownership.
I take up the way of not stealing. In the ultimate sense, nobody owns anything and nothing is owned. Yet we suffer when we are deprived of what we consider ours. I vow to take only what is given and only as much as I need.
The self and things of the world are just as they are. The gate of emancipation is open.
I take up the way of not misusing sex.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the ungilded Dharma, not creating a veneer of attachment is called the precept of not misusing sex.
I take up the way of not misusing sex. Sensuality arises as naturally as the blossoms in spring, and yet its misuse can destroy lives. I vow to honor the integrity of every being and their interconnectivity.
I take up the way of not misusing sex. There is not a single object in the whole universe, yet when we treat beings as separate from us, they suffer. I vow to treat all beings with kindness and respect, and to refrain from harmful sexual behavior.
The three wheels are pure and clear. When you have nothing to desire, you follow the way of all Buddhas.
Take up the way of not speaking falsely.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the inexplicable Dharma, not preaching a single word is called the precept of not speaking falsely.
I take up the way of not speaking falsely. The fundamental truth cannot be explained, and yet communication is essential for human life. I vow to cultivate authenticity in all speech and conduct.
I take up the way of not speaking falsely. The absolute truth can never be obscured, yet when I deceive another it breeds distrust and bolsters ego. I vow to speak from my deepest truth in a skillful and compassionate way.
The Dharma wheel turns from the beginning. There is neither surplus nor lack. The whole universe is moistened with nectar, and the truth is ready to harvest.
I take up the way of not giving or taking drugs.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the intrinsically pure Dharma, not giving rise to delusions is called the precept of not giving or taking drugs.
I take up the way of not giving or taking drugs. Drugs themselves are neither wholesome nor unwholesome, but they become wholesome when used as medicine and unwholesome when used as intoxicants. Although the way is always present, the unwholesome use of drugs obscures that fact. I vow to practice skillfully to only give and take drugs when it is wholesome.
I take up the way of not giving or taking drugs. My original nature is always clear and unobstructed, yet when I cloud myself with intoxicants, it only furthers suffering. I vow not to intoxicate myself or others with drink, drugs, or avoidant behaviors.
Drugs are not brought in yet. Don't let them invade. That is the great light.
I take up the way of not discussing faults of others.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the flawless Dharma, not expounding upon error is called the precept of not discussing faults of others.
I take up the way of not discussing faults of others. Judging another is comparison which hardens the heart and obfuscates one's true nature. I vow to speak in a compassionate way that does not create division between self and other.
Take up the way of not discussing faults of others. Stories are fundamentally insubstantial, yet gossiping and labelling limit possibilities and construct self. I vow not to tell the tales that hold us back.
In the Buddha Dharma, there is one path, one Dharma, one realization, one practice. Don't permit fault-finding. Don't permit haphazard talk.
I take up the way.
I take up the way of not praising myself while abusing others.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the equitable Dharma, not dwelling upon I against you is called the precept of not praising myself while abusing others.
I take up the way of not praising myself while abusing others. To hold oneself up against another is what creates both self and other. I vow to recognize the illusory nature of difference, that each of us is not better, not worse, always coming forth completely without hindrance.
I take up the way of not praising myself while abusing others. Nothing ever truly separates us, but arrogance and comparisons create illusions of self and other. I vow not to indulge in attitudes of better or worse, while also honoring our uniqueness.
Buddhas and ancestral teachers realize the empty sky and the great earth. When they manifest the noble body, there is neither inside nor outside in emptiness. When they manifest the Dharma body, there is not even a bit of earth on the ground.
I take up the way of not sparing the Dharma acid.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the genuine, all-pervading Dharma, not being stingy about a single thing is called the precept of not sparing the Dharma assets.
I take up the way of not sparing the Dharma assets. Not sparing the Dharma assets is to give and receive without hesitation or obstruction. I vow not to let dualistic thinking obstruct the original Dharma sharing that has been here from the beginning, so I do not put myself in the way of what would otherwise flow freely.
I take up the way of not sparing the Dharma assets. The world is full and complete as it is, and yet when I am stingy, others are deprived of the opportunity to practice. I vow to practice generosity continuously, so that we may all realize the Buddha way.
One phrase, one verse, that is the 10,000 things and 100 grasses. One Dharma, one realization, that is all Buddhas and ancestral teachers. Therefore, from the beginning, there has been no stinginess at all.
I take up the way of not indulging in anger.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the selfless Dharma, not contriving reality for the self is called the precept of not indulging in anger.
I take up the way of not indulging in anger. Clinging to anger perpetuates one's suffering and transmits it to others. I vow to cultivate the spaciousness to recognize anger as a teacher and allow it to soften and reveal the deep caring that lays beneath it.
I take up the way of not indulging in anger. Anger is a natural part of being human, yet left unchecked it causes hurt and fear. I vow to practice vulnerability and wisdom, so that defensiveness does not obstruct the true Dharma.
Not advancing, not retreating, not real, not empty. There is an ocean of bright clouds. There is an ocean of solemn clouds.
I take up the way of not defaming the three treasures.
Self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the One, not holding dualistic concepts of ordinary beings and sages, is called the precept of not defaming the three treasures.
I take up the way of not defaming the three treasures. Not defaming the three treasures is to polish them in everyday life. To polish the three treasures is to take refuge in them and sincerely practice the way. I vow to practice sincerely and honor the three treasures in all their manifestations.
I take up the way of not defaming the three treasures. Buddha nature is not subject to defamation or praise, yet unwise words might discourage my brothers and sisters from engaging in the way. I vow to live from the three treasures so that others might experience peace in their lives.
The teisho of the actual body is the harbour and the weir. This is the most important thing in the world. Its virtue finds its home in the ocean of essential nature. It is beyond explanation. We just accept it with respect and gratitude.
So we now come to the time of looking at the rakusus and passing the rakusus over. This is Myvanwy's, which she has sewn. Beautiful envelope. And this is the rakusu, which I'll hold up and Allan might say a few words. There's writing on the back. And before describing the writing, just the front of the rakusu, there's a pattern that is likened to the rice fields of India, and it's also reminding us of how the robes of the Buddha were often made from just leftover pieces of fabric, sort of patchwork, which reminds us that we're really wanting to lead a simple and humble life. So this is the sewing that Myvanwy has done. Did you want to speak about this at this point?
Yes, so I hope everybody can see that reasoning clearly. One other thing, Neti, is just the on the back of the strap, the pine needles are quite important too. So on the back is sewn broken pine, two pine needles attached to one stem, and these represent form and emptiness. Also, the mountain spirit of Zen. And on the panel, for each of Alex and Myvanwy, I've written their names, and I'd just like to say a little bit about each of these, starting with Myvanwy's Raksu. So the name in Sino-Japanese is Yu, which we have translated as intrepid dragon. The way we come to these names through dialogue between the teacher and the student. So it can be quite an interesting and intricate process doing that. Just to talk briefly about those characters, Yu, Myo, Liu. Yu, the first character, means brave, and it's actually the character that is used in Chinese to translate the word sattva or brave in Sanskrit, and that, of course, is part of the word bodhisattva, and these are bodhisattva. So bodhisattva is sometimes translated as one who is brave and enlightened. The first two characters taken together, Yumyo, basically mean energy or boldness, or again, braveness or courage. And that term, Yumyo, read slightly differently, Yumo, is part of an expression, Yumo Shojin, which means great, courageous, unswerving energy applied towards the goal of liberation. So, as an expression, it's a lovely expression within Buddhism. And of course, Ryu Dragon is a great character and a great being, and of course, very important in Buddhism as something that is powerful and fierce. And Myvanwy was particularly attracted to this character, and I agree that it was absolutely appropriate for her. She is powerful and fierce and determined in her practice. It also resonates very nicely with Robert Aitken Roshi's name, Dai Liu Chotan, or Great Dragon of the Clear Pool. So there is this lovely resonance with our ancestor. I think that's the other writing on that panel is my Dharma and teaching name, Mugen Kyorun. So turning to the other Raksu, which is Alex's. So Alex's name in Sino-Japanese is Shushin, which means guardian of the heart. Alexander means guardian or protector. So it seems very appropriate to have this character as the first character in his name. And Shin, of course, refers not just to the physical heart and our body, or even just even our emotional life or our emotional heart, it refers to the heart mind. It includes all things. And we've just heard Alex, in fact, making vows to protect precisely that, to protect that. Again, I feel that this name is very appropriate to Alex's character and determination to protect the heart mind, to protect the clear mind, the clear pool. And again, I think that aspect of his character came through very clearly in his vow. So, yes, so over to you, Neti. This is, oh, by the way, we should have all taken off our ruckuses. All the people who are wearing ruckuses now take them off, please.
Please place your rucksack on your head over the crown chakra. Verse of the rucksack. I wear the robe of liberation, the formless field of benefaction, the teachings of the Tathagata, saving all the many beings. The great Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva practicing deep Prajna Paramita clearly saw that all five skandhas are empty, transforming anguish and distress. Shariputra form is no other than emptiness, emptiness. Magada at this very place, deep into the sacred ground, high into the empty sky, broadly shading living beings, the tree of wisdom thrives. By rain and soil and sunshine, and by your loving care that we maintain, we dedicate the Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra, our ceremony of Jukai, and ourselves to you, Shakya Muni Buddha Daibuso. We celebrate your sacred presence, your boundless understanding, and your love. Let your true Dharma continue, and your Sangha relations become complete. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. Great vows for all. Many beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wait to them. The Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. The many beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wait to them. The Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. The many beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wait to them. The Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully.
So that concludes the formal part of the ceremony. Thank you, Alex and Myvanwy. Thank you very much, Neti. And thank you, Rain, for your wonderful chanting. It was beautiful. So we now have a little bit of less formal time. First of all, I'd like to invite Alex and Myvanwy just to say a few words from the heart. Alex and Myvanwy, would you like to say something?
I'd like to, I guess, just thank everyone for coming. Thank you very much, Allan, for helping us prepare. Thank you, Griffin, for letting everyone in. Thank you, Neti, for being Allan's buddy. And Rain for doing a really good job of being Eno.
Obviously, thank you to everybody as well. I just wanted to say I couldn't really picture what this was going to be like. I couldn't really feel it, but being here with everybody in person and online was just so beautiful, and I'm so grateful for the whole Sangha and everybody who made this possible. And our practice is not alone, and I really felt that today. So I want to just say thank you very, very much. Your practice supports my practice.